Hey, how's everyone? Let's start. Can you hear me? Great. All right, so let's see. If you take a look at the class schedule, actually, we're supposed to be doing a lot more than than I'm assigning because I understand you have other the other class and you have other work to do. So I'm trying to streamline this process as much as possible. So if you look at your syllabus, we are at October 2nd, right? We're on today is October 2nd. And we're supposed to be talking about more in-depth the literature review. And I'm not asking you to do a matrix or send me the literature review structure or any of that stuff. Instead, I think we'll just make it more streamlined and just go ahead and talk about how to put together the literature review. So once again, I want to make sure that you're using everything that I'm posting on Canvas, right? And hopefully you looked at the PowerPoint annotated bibliography that I posted and have been using the worksheets. So I'm assuming at this stage that you have already collected a number of articles and reading them and um, using the worksheets to create annotated bibliographies. Now, I have updated the PowerPoint titled Literature Review under today, and I've posted it today, right? And take a look at it. Okay? And it's essentially the same PowerPoint that I used during MPA 620. And given this process is supposed to be the accumulation of everything you've learned in during the entire program itself, I'm assuming you're competent with other skill sets that you have learned throughout this program. But once again, I just want to go through this document quickly, the literature review PowerPoint, so that you understand what that I don't like the expression, but what I will be looking for. What I'm looking for is essentially a literature review at the graduate level. So that's what I'm looking for. And what does that mean? Meaning that it's a review of the literature within that discipline, okay? And meaning that, and literature means primarily the majority of the references need to be peer reviewed from the journals of your discipline. So your discipline is public administration. So I'm expecting most of the work cited in the literature review to be coming from public administration sources, okay? So once again, the literature review, it's the core section, and in your case, in the case of the capstone project, it's the core section of your entire paper, because if you think about the length of the expected, if the expected length and the required length of your literature review, your entire capstone project is 20 to 25 pages. And in that case, you have 3 to 5 in the introduction section, and then 5 to 7 in later sections. Meaning the literature review section has to be at least 5 to 7, if not 10. Okay. So I want you to keep in mind what you have in the introduction section and what you will have in the later sections in your capstone paper. And so the length of the literature review, it sets on the syllabus 3 to 5, but that's not going to be enough. Okay? That's not going to be enough. And I would highly, highly recommend to make sure that the length is adequate at this point instead of later on. It's always more stressful to play catch up, right? And I'm sure, and I want this process to be as non-stressful as possible. So I would say go as far as you can and shoot for about 10 pages. It seems like a lot, but for those of you who have been compiling your annotated bibliographies, if each article you have one paragraph, then in no time you know how quickly it adds up. So the literature review is to demonstrate your ability and your understanding of the field of which you are studying or you are doing your research. And in this case, it's public administration. So the second point is that to show a path of prior research and how the current research project is linked to it. Now, of course, these are the goals in writing a literature review, but I need to see at least some attempt in doing that, okay? So each of these main goals, I'm not expecting PhD level or professional grade work, but at the very least, I want to see evidence that you have been thinking about and trying to integrate these goals into your work. So demonstrating the path of prior research, meaning almost tracing the entire discipline, what has been done in this area. Right? And but primarily, we are talking about material research from the past 10 years or so, and I'll come back to that later. Basically, so much of it is about connecting your work to the entire field, right? What other experts in public administration have done on the subject and how your work will contribute to the existing work. So if you look at page 2, there's a slide under titled Attention. And this is very important to you to keep in mind. And it's also important in your during the process of searching for appropriate material to be included in the literature review. And yes, we're not me and other members of the committee. We're not just going to look at how many articles you are citing, but we'll actually pay attention to what kind of material, what kind of resources that you're using in your work, right? So the first point is that, once again, this is your program, public administration, right? You're getting a master's in public administration. You're not getting a master in education or a master's in engineering or finance or any other field. But your graduate degree is going to be in public administration. So the material needs to be public administration oriented, okay? Not necessarily all of the sources, but the majority of your sources should be from public administration journals or books. So it's very important for you to take a look where it's coming from, right? Don't just blindly, the keyword hits and I'm using it. You have to be a little bit more selective, right? And establishing the linkage between the work that you are using and why that work is appropriate to in your project. And second point, peer review. Yes, it's very important for you to use primarily peer review sources, right? Because your literature review, mostly we're talking about research that has been done in the field, okay? Research and studies, not just reports, but actual analysis. And that's why peer-reviewed journals and books from reputable publishers, that's very important for you to understand that those are the approved sources that you use in your literature review. But it's also understandable that in some cases, particularly if you are looking at a topic that is rarely addressed, then it would be a little bit more difficult. That's why I'm saying the majority of your sources. The majority of the work cited in your literature review and the entire paper should be from peer-reviewed journals or books. And the third is recent research, meaning for the most part, you should use sources within the past 10 years because, well, yeah, after 10 years, sometimes the issue has changed fundamentally, right? And you want to use the more updated resource in order to make it current, right? Yeah, and we will go through your literature review, and we will go through your list of citations and references to make sure that all these things are done properly. And one trick to use is identify the major works or using the major works. If everybody cite those articles or books, well, guess what? Half the work is already done for you, right? So, and in many cases, other people have written literature review on those major works. So you already have some impression of what those articles are about. And so the next step is to, find the sources and use those major works in your literature review, right? And you typically, those major works, they are so groundbreaking. Well, first of all, they are so important that everybody cite them, and so why wouldn't you? And second of all, they pretty much set up the subsequent inquiries, the subsequent research, and the subsequent studies, right? They have already said something, and later people either elaborate and extend the original work, or they argue against it. So it would be efficient for you to look up those major works and see what other people have said about those articles or books, and see what you can do, and see how the debate of the topics have been shaped by those works. Okay? And lastly, identify the major themes and perspectives within the field. So much of the literature review is about organizing from broad to specific, right? And so that's why I have created another worksheet for you to use when you are working on your annotated bibliographies. Pay attention to the perspective or the theme that they are using, right? How are they looking at the same problem? For instance, special education. Well, there are many, many, many different ways of looking at this one single, right? So what are the major or different ways that this topic has been addressed by different researchers, right? So use those themes and then organize your literature review. And that's why I included that worksheet, and I don't have it in front of me right now, but in the worksheet I stated, or I included 4 or 5 different themes. But take a look and see if you need more themes than just like 4 or 5, and the major perspectives that are in the field. Okay. So yes, we'll be looking at all these different areas of your literature review to determine whether it is up to the graduate level standard, right? And then the next PowerPoint, where to find research literature. So hopefully at this point you have already started the process, and it's just a review because we talked about this. And the reason why we use scholarly journals, and in this case is public administration, right? We use peer review work because they have been scrutinized other experts in the field have to read that piece anonymously. And then they have to decide whether the work is done well enough and whether the work is actually contributing to the field. And that's why graduate level work, it's very important to mainly use peer review material and sources, okay? And books are also considered peer review, but we are talking about academic publication, all right? Academic books and academic presses, usually university press or Sage publication. You know, those are main academic publishers that also publish books, not just journals, all right? And so it's very, very, very important that really the majority of your citations or the references are coming from peer review sources, okay? The second item, semi-scholarly professional publication, so professional reports. And I've kind of touched on this in the introduction section. They are very useful in contextualizing the topic and the research question. And so they are very useful in clarifying the keywords in your research project, the X and the Y, and why what other professionals have talked about. They are typically less conceptual and less theoretical, and that's why it's less explanatory. They tend to be report, right? They tend to be more focused on reporting basic findings instead of some kind of more intense analysis. So they are useful. And you can use some, but the majority of your sources should be scholarly journals, right? And once again, the literature review is about the studies and research within the field, not just reporting figures or not just recording some kind of facts, right? It's about the research findings in studies, right? What we actually know and the discussion within the field, okay? And they can be potentially biased because funding sources sometimes affects how things are reported, okay? So that's why they are considered less neutral than scholarly journals and less preferred in your literature review, okay? And news magazines and newspapers, again, they are more appropriate for introduction section to provide a context. My phone is not on mute. My phone is off. I think it's one of your, actually, if, oh, okay. Christina, is that your phone? Could you put your thing on mute? A nice costume, by the way. Okay. No worries. Okay, so yeah, try only use newspaper magazines, news magazines and newspapers in the introduction and towards the end. Again, introduction, you want to bring your readers in, and you essentially towards the end of your paper, you are releasing your readers back to the outside world. So it would be a nice touch to use some kind of news article or news magazines towards the end to make that connection, right? Academic, research-oriented, and blah, 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 blah. And towards the end, back to the new world, back to the real world of news report and newspaper news magazines, right? And other sources, serious opinion magazines, and they are partisan. I mean, think about The Nation or even The Economist, you know, somewhat partisan. National Review. All those publications could be partisan, meaning they're coming from a very specific perspective, right? So they already slanted towards one way or the other, and we don't want them. We want the most neutral sources of information, and that's one. And popular magazines and websites. Actually, a lot of newspapers, I'm talking about LA Times or New York Times or Washington Post and all those major newspapers, and they do report academic findings, and those are very useful in finding the original report or the original research. I saw something today about childhood poverty at a neighborhood level and how it affects future income and outcomes and so on and so forth. And it's based on a professional report and also scholarly journals. And they do have the links to those original articles. So it's actually very useful to look beyond, to look at news magazines and newspapers as a way of finding more professional, more refereed journal articles in your literature review. Trust me, all the topics that you have you are working on, there are more sources than you expect. Okay. Websites, they are very incomplete and no oversight. Nobody has looked at them or scrutinized the work that has been done, so they are not really useful. Now, if you use websites to look for the original source, that's good. That's good. Or use everything that you at your disposal, right? And like I mentioned, the literature review that other people have done, very, very useful. Okay. It's already there, and you have the reference section, and so go look at their literature review, what they have said about those published work, and then just go after the breadcrumbs, right? So from that point on, it's a matter of reading the original articles and then look for and start compiling annotated bibliographies, right? Oh, by the way, so for those of you who looked at the class schedule, we have another Zoom session tomorrow. Why am I doing that? Well, for one thing, there's more work to do right now. It's really important that we get this part right so that we have less stress later on, right? If we get the bulk of the work done by early November, then the rest of the time is just minor revision. I really hope minor revision. And some of you get my feedback and you see, in most cases, the revisions could be very minor, right? If you really use the resources that have been, and so that's why I'm trying to push as far as we can. So for the Zoom session tomorrow, I'm just going to say a few more words about the review, and then the next part is to start thinking about the method section. And it's easier than you think, because I'm going to make a lot of suggestions, and I'm going to make sure that you are in the right direction, okay? So that. As a matter of fact, I mean, for one thing, it's more important at this point for you to actually work on the literature review than listening to me, yep. So I think, this is more than enough for you to work on tonight until we do this again tomorrow, right? Now, for those of you who have doubts about your literature review or the resources or the articles that you've collected, in this process, in this stage, basically, I'm just supposed to be in a supervisory role. But if you want to show me a list of articles, citations that you have collected, just the citations or just the references, I'll be happy to look at the list of articles that you've been collecting and see if they are in the right track. But if to be honest, if you've been looking primarily at public administration articles and also referee journals, I think you're in good shape. Okay. But just in case, if you really want me to look at it, then I'd be happy to look at it. I can't guarantee the quickest turnaround because you know, I have other really courses catching on. But yeah, I'll try to help in whichever way I can. Okay. But you know, it'll be a good idea to kind of trust what you know, and I have a feeling that you know more than you do. Right? Okay. So I'll leave the second half of this thing. I'll leave the second half of the PowerPoint for tomorrow, and then we'll continue with that. How's that? Any questions at the moment? Oh, and the other thing is that if we do more Zoom sessions, then later on, especially after November, then we can actually meet a couple, I think we can cancel 2 meetings. I'm not 100% sure yet, but if we do more Zoom sessions now, then later on, particularly if it's just a matter of revising, then later on we can actually meet less in person. And I think that's a better way to go because, you know, it's always a good idea to do the work and then, you know, relax later on. Any other issues I should know at the moment? Any other questions, thoughts? And yes, I pushed back the due date for the literature review, but yeah, don't leave it until after the other assignment is due, because the other assignment is due for your other class. I understand the other one is due on the 15th. So the literature review is due on the 20th. So you only have a few days to put the whole thing together. It wouldn't be good. Seriously, wouldn't be a good idea. You'd be so stressed out, and you know, you'll hate me, and then you know the cycle. Oh, the other thing is that I've received some revisions from the introduction section. I'll get to them tomorrow, and I'll send you feedback as quickly as I can. Okay. The majority of the projects are on the right track, and so it's just a matter of moving on and working on different the other sections. So revisions. Once again, when you revise, no problem. When you revise the introduction section, or when you revise any later sections, make sure that you upload the thing to Turnitin.com. To get a report of your match rate, right? And 15%, 15%, 15%. There's nothing I can do about that, and it's just a good practice, to be honest. And I posted another link on how to paraphrase. Yes, the annotated bibliography is a good idea to start paraphrasing in the annotated bibliography, okay? And it's just a matter of restructuring the sentence and replacing keywords in the sentence, right? Replacing the keywords. So one trick is to have a thesaurus, to use a thesaurus. And you know, there are thesaurus on the internet. You can just, you know, cut and paste words and find different words, switch around the words. But of course, ultimately, you have to understand what the original material is about. Right? You have to understand what the hell is being discussed in the original article in order to paraphrase it coherently. Right? So that it's just a matter of practicing. Right? What else? So don't forget to and you know, if you're, I wouldn't say if you're bored, but if you want a change of pace, work on your introduction section, do the revisions, and then send it to me. And when you send it to me, when you finish your revisions, don't forget to send it to me as an attachment so that I know you have done the revisions. If you just upload the thing to Turnitin.com, Turnitin.com doesn't give me a heads up, right? I wouldn't know that you have revised and updated the section. So, you know, it's a good idea to send it. Oh, it's a good idea. Well, not just a good idea, but I'm asking you guys to send everything you've done whenever as attachments. Okay. What else? No? Okay. Again, yeah, this is a very laborious stage of the semester and the project. But well, think about it this way. Once you are done with the literature review, hypothetically, if you know, go all the way to when would we know something face to face? I'll try to do that as soon as possible. I'll try to confirm with the MPA program and then get back to you guys. All right? Yeah. Because it involves Carnegie hours and you know it's a program-wide thing. I have to make sure that I'm in compliance. Otherwise, there'll be consequences to all of us. And so, you know, I just need to make sure before. But that's what I'm throwing out there to let you know that you know the more Zoom sessions we do now, the easier later on. Okay. What else? Okay, so like always, I will convert this thing to the recording to YouTube and I'll make it available. And yeah, I'm seeing some projects coming together and it should be a little bit more reassuring knowing that you know, you have the direction, right? So, okay. Yeah, tomorrow, same time and same channel, and I'll see you guys then. Okay.